Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. There's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com. This is episode 41. We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land.
And welcome back to another week of Let's Be Well Together. It's Sammy and John here for a What's on Your Mind. So what's on your mind?
Well, we're kind of getting in this rhythm where we often talk about a social media post one time and some other stuff. And today we're on social media post.
Yeah.
You mentioned the term a long time ago, toxic positivity, which was something I wasn't familiar with. Mm-hmm. And then we talked about active listening and came on to the same kind of topics.
Right.
I just saw a social media post I really like. It's from letstalk.mentalhealth on Instagram. It compares what people think support sounds like to what support actually sounds like. And it kind of fit right in with what we were talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Recently, we did one where we read stuff out and then we talked about a couple. Can we do that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So let me start by saying what people think support sounds like. Mm-hmm. And then we'll take turns talking about what
it actually does.
Yes, exactly.
Sounds good.
What reminded me of the toxic positivity is what people think support sounds like. When you hear things like, you'll be fine, or don't worry, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like when you said, don't worry, you still have a job, or
exactly.
It'll pass.
Yeah. And it's funny because I hear those two things and in my head, I wonder, I'm like, how do people think that sounds supportive? But I guess it does if you think that that's just like taking the edge off of the issue, you'll be fine. I would take that off as like if someone said that to me when I was crying to them or something, I take it as a don't talk to me about your issues anymore.
I know. It's sad on different levels. On one hand, there's just people who just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And there's people who are afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely.
And sadly, there's people who actually think that's what they should say because they think it'll help you.
Yeah.
You'll be fine, Sammy. Just hang in there. Just push through it.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember Michael Herman saying that. People kept saying to him, just push through it.
Right.
Not the right thing to hear at that time.
No, because sometimes it's also implying like, don't even think about the issue, bury it down and just keep going. And it's like, no, I think it's important to address those issues.
Yeah, confront it.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Sometimes even confronting it and not feeling great about that is better than burying it.
Yeah, 100%.
Again, we touched on this in active listening. The goal isn't necessarily to tell, you're not trying to give the person the answer to their problem.
Yeah. You
might not know it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can help direct them to somebody or help say something that's really helpful, but there certainly is some things you can do. And let's go through what support actually sounds like. So maybe if you read the ones on the left, I'll read the ones on the right.
Sounds good.
Taking turns.
Yeah. So here's some examples of what support can actually sound like. First one is, I'm sure that is really difficult. And I think that's kind of acknowledging the issue. Knowing that it's difficult.
Yeah, when I took my course for mental health first aid, they called that, there's normalizing can be used in many contexts. One of them is if we talk about mental health issues, that normalizes a conversation.
Yeah.
But another one is letting the person know that what they're experiencing and the impact on them of what they're experiencing is legitimate.
Definitely.
Forget about whether they're actually experiencing it or if it's as bad as they think.
Yeah.
If what they tell you is that something is happening and making them feel that way, chances are it probably is something that's really difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one is, I'm here for you. We'll come back and talk about our favorites, but
sounds good.
Okay.
Next one is, how can I help?
And then, I can't imagine how that feels.
Thank you for telling me.
Give them a hug.
Your feelings are valid.
And lastly, you're not alone. I don't think, again, we can talk about all of them, but is there some that you'd like to start with?
Yeah, I think that I am here for you is important. I think it again, because sometimes people come up to you, they start talking about their issues or whatever's going on in their life, but they're not ready to fully divulge into all of the information. So by telling someone that you are here for them, it gives them like a safe space to come back and open up to you again. Maybe they're not ready to tell everything right now, but you're there for them and they know that. Because sometimes people don't acknowledge that, and then that person might think that they're alone.
It seems like the opposite. So when you read the first ones, that you know, the ones that aren't so helpful, if someone said you'll be fine, you said to you that sounds like them saying, I don't really want to talk about this.
Exactly.
And it seems like what you're saying there is the I'm here for you is the opposite. Okay, like stop the world.
Yep.
I'm here with you.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to listen to you.
For sure. Yeah, I think so too. And like the I am here for you, it just like carries on throughout the rest of anything that happens within your life with that person versus the you'll be fine. It's kind of like, I don't think I'll ever go to that person with an issue or a problem that I have again, right?
I don't, obviously I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't know how it all works, but I do know that if somebody hears I'm here for you, that may be what they're looking for in some situations too. So, that in itself might solve a lot of the issues.
Definitely.
And be a big step forward.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to talk about the next one, actually. How can I help?
Yeah.
That's something I go back again. I'm always cross-referencing shows because I find them all interrelated. And I remember I was talking with Adrian Decoux, and he was saying, and Beth Beatty too, where they were saying, if you think somebody needs help, rather than assuming the help that they need, why don't you ask them?
Yeah.
And I was mentioning to Adrian, and I'll bring it back again, that analogy I had read on an Instagram post. It was talking about kids who are going through trauma, and then they come for somebody. It was directed to professionals who were giving help to kids. And there was a kind of a comic, and it was a kid comes in, sits down in a restaurant, and the waiter puts down a plate of fish. Here's your fish. And they're like, I don't want fish.
Right. Yeah.
So like when you go into a restaurant, it's not very helpful if they just put a plate down in front of you without even asking what you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm getting better at active listening, but in my not so great version, if you came over and started telling me something, I couldn't help but stop. Like, what's this about? What's the solution?
Yes.
What is she asking me for?
Definitely.
And it's better to stop and say, okay, like listen, and then how can I help?
Yeah, 100%. And I agree. The how can I help can be so powerful. And that's something I am trying to also like actively stop myself, because something I tend to do, I try to like really relate to people when they come to me with their problems.
Yeah, you're kind of empath, right?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I really try to relate to them, and I'm trying to make them feel like they're not alone. But sometimes in that, I'll start telling them a story of like how I was in a similar situation, which can help at times where people feel like, okay, like this happens to everybody. Like when it comes to relationships or something, like, oh, that happened to you and your boyfriend as well. And then it makes you feel like a little bit better. But I'm trying to stop myself, because sometimes it makes it seem like I'm turning the situation onto my own problems when that person might need someone just to listen. So I try to stop myself. And one of the first things I ask is, how can I help? And maybe somebody says, I just needed to get it off my chest. Maybe somebody needs to go through some solutions and some problem solving. And maybe somebody does need someone to relate to them, and they'll ask, has that ever happened to you? And then I can go into maybe my own personal experience.
Yeah. And maybe because you say, how can I help? And they go, I don't even know, like I can't even think.
Yeah.
And then, so another analogy is, I don't like people like this happened to me a lot with running and weight loss and stuff, where someone's like, whoa, wow, you look great. And what do you, I hear you're running? And I'm like, yeah, I love running. Now, and I've thought so much about my running form and all this stuff and my training plan. And instead of like talking to me, oh, that's great, and are you enjoying it? They say, you should read this book by so-and-so. Or even a lot of times, like people are like, this one really gets me, is they're like, oh, I heard you wrote a book about wellness. I said, yes, I did. And I'm trying to learn more about it on my podcast. And they're like, well, you should read this book. And I'm like, okay, thanks. Yeah. I don't know how to take that.
Yeah.
So what about this scenario? Someone tells you something that bothers them. Yeah. And then you say, well, how can I help? And they're like, I have no idea. At that point, maybe it makes sense for you to say, listen, I've been through a similar experience. But instead of just dumping it on them, saying, would you like me to, can I talk about it?
Yeah. And I think it's important to also wait until they're finished, like telling what they needed to get off their chest. And then you can dive into maybe how you can relate to it versus doing it mid-sentence of somebody else telling their story.
Yeah. And then, by the way, the rest of my story there too is that sometimes I do say, well, what's the book about?
Yeah.
And then they tell me, I say, yeah, I would like to read that. But it just seems to me like you shouldn't just always uninvited just be telling people what you think they should hear.
Yeah.
Or like, especially if they've done something, I don't think the best thing to do is automatically say, well, I know 3 people who did that better. Or, you know, like you didn't even read what I did. So,
right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I think, you know, even though we're running a bit at the end of our time, I wouldn't mind talking about one more if there's one that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah. Something that stood out to me on the list is something that makes me uncomfortable sometimes, and it's give them a hug.
That one I'm really struggle with too.
Yeah, and
I'm getting better at it though.
Yeah, good. It's something that, like, you know, it's your love language. It's different people's love languages, and my love language isn't physical touch. Sometimes though, it's what you need. Sometimes, like, there is a study on how, like, human embracing, like a hug for 3 seconds where that's all you're doing, automatically, like, takes down your anxiety. I don't know the exact study, but
no,
you know, but it is interesting, and that can help a lot. And sometimes that's all you need, but it's something that, again, like, is out of my comfort zone. So I don't think to give people hugs always.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to be, I'm going to try it, but I'm going to be a little more judicious on that one just because of context and people and whatnot. But, you know, here's an experience from my life. It's not unusual for me to be pretty stressed out over something.
Yeah.
And Sheila's like, come on, John, let's go for a walk. And I don't really want to, but I do. And it does feel better.
Yeah.
But I'm still like, kind of like, just leave me in my space. And I'm trying.
Yeah.
And then Sheila will reach out and hold my hand. You know, sometimes I start to rebuff it, but if I don't, if I hold her hand, all of a sudden I just start to feel more calm. Like,
definitely.
we've been married a long time, so that impact has a pretty strong impact on me.
For sure.
So I can imagine, especially in a case, where maybe you're not sure what to say. You both come to a point you're not sure what to say, but just giving a person a hug, I can imagine having a physical impact on them in a good way.
Yeah, I think it really just, like, takes in, because it kind of goes with, you know, I can't imagine how that feels. You don't really know how that person's feeling. You don't really know how to respond, but maybe just, like, a silent, like, physical support is all that person really needed, just to take a breath and come back to the present.
I love that one. So I think, you know, and overall what this is saying is you're trying to be there for a person, not just say that you're being there, but you're actually trying to be there for the person.
Yeah.
So don't say platitudes that just makes them feel as if you're not interested, as if you're not understanding, as if you don't care.
Yeah.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds.
Today's interview is in the category of spiritual wellness, and I'm speaking with Clarence Cachagee. Clarence has an undeniable spirit for change, with a focus on working with the spirit within. He's a helper, visionary, and author who's known for investing his whole self into his community. Clarence originates from the Chapleau Cree First Nation and calls Waterloo region his home. He's faced struggles and chooses to serve and support those living on the margins of society. Clarence continues to engage with his community through land-based teaching and healing, and as an Indigenous community educator, public speaking and facilitating groups to encourage healing. Clarence says, "It's said that Mother Earth has all the medicines for every disease there is. Indigenous people of Turtle Island are land-based. They've received the teachings from the animals. Their creation stories are about Mother Earth, and it's said that you can go anywhere on Turtle Island and find the medicine you need. Understanding land-based philosophies helps us become better connected and feed our spirits." Clarence works at Conestoga College as an Aboriginal Services Coordinator and the visionary and founder of Crow Shield Lodge. Welcome, Clarence.
All right. How are you doing today?
Great. I'm lucky to have talked to you previously. You mentioned something about 4 quadrants, and of course, you're not speaking for all Indigenous people, but you were talking about an approach to wellness, and with a podcast like ours where we talk about different categories, how could I not get you on here and ask you a little bit about it?
Right. So those 4 quadrants, John, yes. So important. And, you know, for such a long time in my life, before I had an understanding of an Indigenous worldview, I just thought it was my mind and my body. I thought if I had a healthy mind, and if I worked on my diet and eating healthy and exercised, that's all I had to worry about. That's all I had to worry about. But as I reconnected with my culture, I started to have a better and a new understanding of who I was as a whole spiritual being having a human experience. I started to get teachings about those 4 quadrants that are within us all. I started getting teachings about the mind, the body, the spirit, and our emotions, and how all of those quadrants have you and me right in the middle of it. So we are right in the middle of those 4 quadrants. You connect those 4 quadrants, you put a dot, that's where we are. In order to find balance, we need to exercise those quadrants equally. We need to feed those quadrants equally in order to lead a balanced life. One of the most challenging things with addressing balance is with the mind and with the spirit. The reason it's so hard to address balance with the mind and spirit, especially for Indigenous people, it's because of everything that we've been exposed to. And all of those things that have oppressed us, all of those things that have been taken away from us, all of those unjust things that have been done to us. And then how people have tried to break our spirits through either making our ceremonies illegal, putting us in jail, segregating us from other people. And it's pretty horrendous that has been done to the original people of this land. They tried to break our spirits. They tried to oppress us. They tried to do everything they could, and it didn't work.
If I can just ask a little bit about the spirit side of things.
Yeah.
In a lot of Western cultures, we talk about religion, and that kind of associated typically with some type of theology, a belief in God or something like that. I know you've talked earlier about prayer.
Yeah.
And I assume that the prayer is related to the spiritual side for you. But is it a religion, or like how would you characterize your beliefs? And not that it has to go in a pigeonhole. I'm just kind of trying to sort out, how does it work?
We believe there is an entity that created everything. We have creation stories within all of our different nations. And they all start from the sky. They all start from the stars, from the galaxies and beyond.
I actually did once read a story about the Iroquois creation story, which was pretty fascinating, with a mother and the 2 brothers.
Right.
And one, let's say good, and one, let's say evil. And so the good, when they ended up on Earth, the good brother may, for example, make a beautiful rose, and the other brother would put thorns on it. And it was just a fascinating story.
And a lot of those stories are true to us. That's those teachings. We've been gifted those teachings for a very, very long time. They've been passed on orally.
I didn't mean story in the sense of made up. I meant story in the sense of it was just kind of a beautiful way of understanding the origins.
No, it is a story. That's what we call them. They're creation stories. They are a story. We call them. I don't think I've heard it called a creation teaching. Anyways, let's get back.
Okay.
to spirituality versus religion. I'm kind of glad you asked me this. I was at a world religion conference about 6 years ago, and one of my friends and mentors, Max Solis, Dr. Max Solis, was there. They had all of these different religions, all at the University of Waterloo. He was representing the Anishinaabe. And he was on a panel. And then somebody in the audience had a question specifically for him. And they asked him if the Creator and God are the same person. Max shook his head and he said, I was hoping I wouldn't get asked this question. Because remember, he's at a world religion conference. He said, no, God and the Creator are not the same people. It's not the same entity. Never was. Never will be. The Creator is in you. The Creator is in me. The Creator is in everything around us outside, in the birds, in the air, in the trees, in the animals, in the grass, in the dirt, in the soil, in the rocks. The Creator is everywhere around us, and the Creator is love. God, on the other hand, was brought to us over a big, vast body of water in a wooden ship. God was brought to us in a form of a little black book by these men wearing long, dark robes. Before that ship and before those men with those long robes in that black book, God wasn't here. And if God is so good and God has all of these commandments that people are supposed to live by, how could that God be so bad to us, Indigenous people in the residential schools? That's a God that I don't want to know. That's a God that I don't want to follow.
And earlier you were saying that because of experiences Indigenous people went through, it's challenging, it's difficult to center mind and spirit. And it sounds like that is an example of one of the issues that you're confronting.
Mm-hmm.
So spiritually, for example, what are a couple things maybe you could do to nourish your spirit?
How do I feed my spirit?
Exactly.
That's what I really like to help people do. I like to help them find out what feeds their spirit. What feeds my spirit is being out on the land. When I am out on the land, I feel so connected. I have a deep, deep connection. I'm a land-based person. As Indigenous people, we are land-based people. Our home is the land. You know, we are the earth and the earth is us. And so what else do I do? Ceremony. I do ceremony. I have Crow Shield Lodge. You know, we do monthly sweats out there. I help with that. I like to be around the fire. I love to facilitate. I love to public speak. That feeds my spirit. I love to be around my children. I love to see my granddaughter. Things like that feed my spirit.
It's interesting because I'm trying to develop, so I have my 8 categories that I'm working on. And to try and simplify things, to make them manageable, I'm trying to put together associated activities with them. So, for example, if I'm feeling like maybe I'm not nourished on the spiritual side, I try and think of what are some things I can actually do. And in that context, one of the things you said, which is so real to me, which is spending time in nature, really makes me feel good and grounds me. For me, it's particularly if I'm in a forest or if I'm close to water with waves coming in, that has a real direct effect on me. But I saw that as environmental. And I just love thinking of it now as spiritual, that the earth can help nourish my spiritual side.
Yes,
I was thinking of it more as nourishing my mental wellness, but you're right. It's probably my spiritual.
Yes, you make that connection with the earth, and that's what we do at Crow Shield Lodge. We wanted to figure out a way to take people back out to the land, because the land has everything that we need to become well again. That's where all of our medicines come from. That's where all of our teachings come from. And when someone veers off that good path in life, as a community, we don't push them away. We don't put them in jail. We don't shun them. We don't, categorize them. And that's not what we do. We surround them as a community, as love, and we take them back out to the land. Because that will realign them. That will give them everything that they need. That's where our medicines come from. That's where we do our ceremonies. The water, everything is on the land.
Well, you invited me when we were setting this up to come out and visit you at Crow Shield. And I think I'm going to do that. I'll talk to Sheila and see if we can't come out and visit you one of these days.
That would be amazing.
In the meantime, proof that you're going to have to come back and talk to us. We're already out of time. So, but it's at a good point, because talking about activities that nourish the spirit.
Yeah.
Well, think about different areas of your life. And I'm going to ask you the same question I ask every guest as we explore wellness and trying to nourish different areas of wellness in our life. So thinking about it right now, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And can you think of even one activity you could do to foster wellness in that area?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. And it's funny because sometimes life just takes care of itself. Life just takes care of itself.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, but you have to always be aware, and you have to be open to these messages that you could be getting. I always want to keep growing spiritually. And, how can I do that? I developed Crow Shield Lodge, right? We bring in facilitators. John, I only know what I know. I don't know everything. And what I do know, I share. But with creating Crow Shield Lodge, there's also been an opportunity for me to excel with my spirituality. And how did that happen? It's that through the people that are connected to Crow Shield Lodge, we've started conversation with bringing a trainer down from James Bay. And he's going to train us and be with us for 4 years.
And for people who are listening to this outside of Canada, just a quick note that James Bay is very far north in Canada.
Yes, so we've been fortunate enough to just, everything just aligned. So now I have an opportunity to really excel with my spirituality.
Well, that sounds exciting, and I wish you the best of luck with that. And with luck, I'll be out at Crow Shield Lodge, and you can tell me how it's going by the time I get there.
Exactly.
Well, Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great talking to you, and hopefully we'll get to do that again one day.
And John, I just want to say thank you for inviting me here and for gifting me with some of your time. I believe the best gift we can ever give is our time, because it's a piece of our lives that we're never going to get back again. So thank you for gifting me with some of your life.
Well, and I echo those sentiments, so thanks. A quick note for new listeners who don't know the approach to wellness and balance in my book, Accidentally Well by John Webster. Please consider reading it. It's a 3-step approach. First, I identified categories of wellness that are important to me. Second, I'm figuring out activities that foster wellness in each area. Third, I do a wellness check-in from time to time, especially if I'm feeling off. Join us for the ride as I explore this approach in the podcast and co-hosts explore their perspectives.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. This past weekend, I got to see a few of my friends perform in their band here in Ottawa. And they're not just any friends, they're actually also my bandmates. You might remember that Shy Harry has some band member overlap with the band Pilot Project, and that's who came up this weekend. So Pilot Project features Grant Gimple on the guitar and the vocals, Ryan Whitney on the drums, and those two are both in Shy Harry with me and Eric. And then the third member is Nick Fernandez, who plays the bass, but also rips a mean flute. And this show was no exception, but sometimes they bust out the flute for a couple of tunes, and it's always a really cool mix into the vibe. And Pilot Project's original tunes are funk rock, and they're really catchy. It's really groovy stuff. And they do some ripping covers as well. So this weekend was great because not only did I get to take in a cool show, but it was my friends putting it on. Entry was cool. It wasn't just a ticket price. It was a non-perishable food item to donate to the food bank. So a good cause all around. And the turnout was significant enough that by the end of the night, the donation pile was well-sized. Good things all around. As a little added fun bonus, they even pulled me up to sing a song towards the end, which is always a good time. That's pretty much it. A nice, short, sweet little adventure this weekend. Set some gear up, take in a show, sing a song, tear some gear down, load it up, maybe have a pint and catch up a bit. It was perfect. I encourage you to check out their music. That's Pilot Project. You'll know when you see it because their logo is a little paper plane. It's awesome. That's all for me for this time. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
We love our listeners and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
So it turns out a lot of my interviews are flowing from water cooler conversations at work. So in this case, I was talking to someone at work and saying, you know, I only know people at work and I only know family and I want to talk to people who like working out as part of Move That Body. A main thrust of our show is that making exercise part of your everyday life. In my experience, it helps me in all areas of wellness. So it's just a really important message we're trying to send. They said, oh, well, you should talk to Nicholas Cumby. He loves to go to the gym. And I said, great, put me in touch with him. And here we are. So hi, Nick.
Hey, John.
It's great to talk to you and great to meet you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's very exciting.
And I know you're in the Montreal area, and that's nostalgic for me because Sheila and I lived there for the first 4 years of our marriage and just loved the city.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun place to be. We've been here for almost 4 years as well, so definitely a lot to do.
Awesome. Okay, so you like going to the gym. What do you like doing at the gym? What kind of exercise?
I typically do heavy weightlifting, a lot of barbell movements. So most of it is squats, deadlift, bench press, those kind of, and things that revolve around that.
What about dumbbells? I do a lot of dumbbell stuff, but because I have them at home, I don't actually have a barbell. So
I find that I use dumbbells for more targeted things, or if I'm doing one arm, like alternating things, certain leg movements where it's one leg at a time. So I definitely do those as well. But I think for more targeted exercises.
Is there much dynamic weightlifting you do as well? And by that, I just mean where there's a little more movement, a little more changes in movement.
Not too much. I have some exercises I do where there is a little bit more of that dynamic feel, but a lot of what I do is really focused around building a very strong foundation and more of the classic movements and really focusing on those really large muscle groups. It's more linear, I guess.
In a perfect week, how many times do you get to go to the gym?
I usually do 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then we have a dog, so I'm usually doing about 6 to 8 kilometers with her a day as well. So,
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's usually my week.
Do you do kind of a fast walk or a slow walk? How does that go?
It depends on the dog, really. She sometimes likes to be at that trot level, and other times she wants to smell. So if we can get a brisk walk in, I'll do that, and then let her have her time and the other walks.
Now, if you go 3 times a week, some people like to do legs one day, arms another day, that kind of thing. But if you're giving yourself a day off in between, do you do kind of like a more well-rounded each time you go, or do you focus on muscle groups?
I still kind of focus on muscle groups. I have a coach, and he rotates what we do about every 6 to 8 weeks. So everything gets pretty well covered, but typically I do legs one day, upper or chest and back on another day. And then typically my Friday will be more well-rounded, touch a bit of everything and kind of get the whole body feeling good.
And then recuperate over the weekend. And do you find that having a coach gets you out there sometimes when you don't want to go, or gets you to do a little bit more or a little bit? Like, what's the advantage of having a coach to you?
I think for me, I had a very good experience and knowledge base with the gym, but I just felt I didn't have the time myself to plan it out. So having a coach has really opened that door for me to, I guess, move past the plateaus I would have seen in the past. So I think it's been a really great experience for me having the coach.
And what do you like about weightlifting in terms of how it makes you feel either at the gym or in your everyday life?
I think something I really enjoy about weightlifting and the gym in general is I feel like I have control there. So there's a lot of aspects of life that we can't control. But with the gym, I push myself. I know what I can do, and I can push those limits and pick the weights I want, and mix in some things that I like. So I find that it's a place where a lot of people see limitations, but I try to find the opportunities there. So it's a place I find that I can thrive.
That's amazing. I never thought of it in that context before. And what about stress? Is there any kind of stress relief associated with weightlifting?
Yeah, I think stereotypically people see, heavy weights and, dropping weights and kind of blowing off some steam. And I think there is a bit of that, but I like to just be there and think on what I'm doing. And not that it's carefree, but I know that this is what I'm here to do. And there's no one waiting on me, or there's no deadlines or anything like that. So I think that stress kind of melts away when I get to be active.
And I'm assuming that you have to really focus on the moment when you're doing the exercises, because technique is important.
Yeah, technique, very important, keeping your form. Otherwise, we can see injuries. So yeah, focus is definitely a big one. So I find actually after the gym, I need some downtime to kind of unwind in that sense.
Interesting. Okay. Well, look, I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk with us and tell us how you enjoy weightlifting, and good luck with it as you go forward.
Oh, my pleasure, John. I appreciate the opportunity.
There's a thought. Popped up while running.
Life's always throwing reality checks at us. Of course, you've got to be open to receiving them. But really, I guess what I'm talking about in this one maybe isn't a reality check, but a self-check, because I was out for a run a little bit before my London Marathon. I realized something really important that I had let slip for years, even though it was important to my run training. And you probably can tell from many of the things I talk about that I'm pretty analytical when it comes to the training. So I like to come up with a system and work on that system. And it's not probably the best. Like a lot of runners talk about just running on feel and how amazing that works for them. And I kind of wish I was more intuitive like that. But, we are who we are. And so I like to take an approach where there's a system. When I really got into running and really started to love it about 5 or 6 years ago, what really got me into it was I realized that if I ran at an aerobic heart rate most of the time, it was really enjoyable. It wasn't super stressful. It made me feel really good. Not so much always while I was running, but after I was running, I felt amazing. And I had read some books by Dr. Phil Maffetone, and he has what he calls the MAF, so MAF, MAF 180 formula, or the MAF heart rate, different ways of saying that. But essentially, you take the number 180 and you subtract your age, and that's a heart rate that you try not to exceed when you're doing most of your aerobic training. When I started doing this, I was about 52, so 180 minus 52, you can calculate that number. And then there is a bit of an exception where if you're not injured and some other stuff that you can add a few heartbeats, but I'm not going to get into that minutia. But the point was, I had great success training for a marathon using that heart rate as my main aerobic heart rate. But what happens? You start to get good at something, and then you kind of forget the rationale. And so I never updated my apps every year. So every year when I got older, that heart rate dropped by 1 beat per minute. And I never really updated it. And I just always knew the heart rate that I was trying to run at. And then I also forgot about the fact that I had added some heartbeats because I fit into the criteria that allowed you to do that, which included that your speed had been increasing and that you had no injuries for an amount of time. And so here I was running along, not too long a time before my last marathon. So most of my training had already been done. And I was wondering what in the world is going on. Like, I know that after I got COVID, I slowed down a bit. I know that because I put on some weight, I slowed down a bit. But I was doing one of my long runs and wondering, why am I so much slower this year than when I was training last year? Why does it feel harder? Wine, all that stuff. And then boom, it occurred to me, John, you've kind of forgotten about this whole approach to heart rate. You're running at least 5, if not more, beats per minute too fast because you didn't acknowledge the fact that you're getting older every year. You didn't subtract that extra heartbeat. I also hadn't factored in that I was injured. I had both an Achilles tendon injury and I had a muscle injury in my glute. So I couldn't take advantage of those few extra heartbeats anymore. And so I should have dropped my heart rate by quite a few beats per minute. On one hand, it was kind of a bad moment because I was feeling a little bit stupid about being a bit arrogant and not making that change. But another, it was really a good feeling because I knew that, okay, all right, let's get through this marathon and let's regroup afterwards and let's start running at the right heart rate, taking into account that I am older, and let's see if I can't get back on track. It's me.
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin. Well, I want to talk about public transit, John.
Yeah, again, so we're going on and on about our trip to London. Why? Because we loved it.
Yeah, but not only that, it's when you go to different countries, you get different experiences. So you bring things back and you're like, oh, this and that, exactly. Right? It's different. So, and
it's on our mind, and we were kind of making note of things we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, which is funny.
And we want to do it while it's fresh in our mind, even though we might not put it on a show till much later.
Right. Yeah. So when we were in London, we did take public transit all the time. Actually, to a point where we had the hop on, hop off bus for a day, and it was going too slow. So I was like, John, we got to get off because this is getting nowhere. It's a waste of time. So we got off and went on the tube station.
So just to get the language out, a tube is a subway in London. Right. So we were taking the tube, we were taking buses, those cool double-decker buses, and we were taking trains.
Yeah. You can use the same pass for everything.
Yeah. There was something called an Oyster card.
Yep.
And here's a little tip. If anyone's going to London, you can either get an Oyster card or a travel card. The travel card just is basically all your transit for a week or 10 days, whatever you buy it for. I did a little bit of research going into it and heard that it's better to get the Oyster card where you actually have to use your credit card to put money on the Oyster card. When you leave, you can get any unspent money back. In our case, we couldn't. It cost £7 for the Oyster card. We didn't get that refunded.
But it was still a better deal.
But it was still a better deal to get the Oyster card.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, I love the fact that you can travel quite a long distance into different cities within like outskirts of London and use the same card. Whereas here in Canada, you can use it for Kitchener, but it's a different one for Guelph. It's a different one for Milton, or different one for Mississauga, and then a different one for Toronto. So, you either got to have all these different cards or, pay continuously. It's not like you can pay in Kitchener and you can travel, on the subway station in Toronto.
But the most amazing thing was, we often say you don't really need a car. You can always take a bus. It's not the best in our town because the buses run kind of on odd schedules, and it's harder to get some places than others. But the subway system there was unbelievable. There was, I don't know how many lines they had, and they had these great things like apps where you say, I want to go here, and it tells you exactly where to go. Yeah. It gives you an option for a bus or a subway.
Yep.
And so let me just step back for a second too. We had taken a trip 10 or 15 years ago to another city in Europe, and it was on the last day where we bumped into a market.
Right.
Where we got some fresh fruit. And so going into this, we said a couple things. One was that we wanted to find a market the first day, which we did. And secondly, that we wanted to jump on the subway, jump on the bus the first day or two so we get comfortable with it to see how it went.
Right.
And it was a great idea because after a day, we felt like we just were like, we could go anywhere we wanted in a relatively short amount of time. Yep. No sweat, no pressure. And we really didn't think we'd need a car. And I can imagine, and then by the time I left, I was thinking, if I lived in London, I probably wouldn't have a car.
Me neither. Like when we were on the bus, the hop on, hop off bus, the traffic jams it was in, it really was frustrating. I would not want to drive in London, I don't think. And I from my understanding, a lot of people don't.
No,
like a lot of the people in London.
If you think about how much it costs for insurance and how much a car costs for gas and everything else, you really don't need a car. And on the occasions you do, you can either Uber it if you're in town, or you could rent a car, and you'd come out ahead financially. And just generally, it's just kind of a better way to go about things.
I agree completely. I just wish that we could start extending, like instead of procrastinating and saying, oh, well, this is just the way it is, or this is too expensive. I wish we could start extending it so that we get better public transportation, because people will utilize it if it's better. But right now it's not enough.
Right. So there's two sides of it. There's the amazing side in London, and there's the not so amazing side in a lot of cities in Canada.
Yeah.
Not sure about some in the States. I assume it's the same. But, you know, the more I see it, the more I see how important it is. And yes, it's really expensive. And yes, it disrupts things for a while. But
yes.
Ultimately, to me, if you think about the environment, if you think about a whole bunch of issues and financial overall,
Yeah.
you know, in terms of what people will ultimately save, even though there's upfront costs, I've kind of changed my mind in large part over the years, and especially now after this trip, to think that for a whole bunch of reasons, it's really important to make public transport, efficient public transport that gets you all over town,
Yes.
make it a real priority.
I agree.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. We're here with Sheila, Sammy, and John. Hi, everybody. How you doing, Sammy?
Pretty good. How about you?
I am so great. I had an excellent weekend. We, John and I got our condo back, and we were there this weekend trying to, getting all the cleaning. But we actually had our family down. So 3 of my family members have places, me being one of them, in Collingwood. So between the 3 of us, we housed our whole family, and we had a few get-togethers and had a wonderful time. And I cannot comment enough about the weather.
Yeah, it was gorgeous.
It was amazing. So the weather was beautiful, and everyone had a great time, and everyone was able to come for at least one night. So that was really great. But that pretty much took up my whole week, because between working and planning dinners and getting stuff, getting the condo organized and back, that was pretty much everything I did this week. So what about you, Sammy?
Sounds awesome. I have had a busy week as always.
Yes.
The normal. But this weekend we actually got to have some of the cousins over for a little housewarming.
Oh, very good.
So that was fun. It felt like we kind of got it a little bit together more, to the point of where, I don't know, maybe I can like relax a little bit after work instead of just trying to do other stuff for the house. So that was nice. And I got to take a nap on the couch finally. So I feel like that's like the peak relaxment. So that was really nice to have people over and have a good time.
To christen the house finally.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
And you're now living there full time.
Yep, living there full time.
Good.
Yeah, it's looking good. There's still some little projects we need to do, but it'll always happen, I think. Like, it'll never end.
I don't know if it ever ends, does it, John?
Yeah.
He's shaking his head. Nope, never ends.
Yeah. So, John, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I was shaking my head because I was a little further from the mic. It's great that we're doing this live. Sammy came over and we got a couple sessions done. And you say it's busy as usual, but I'm thinking it's probably busier than usual with a new house, working nights and day. And now you're doing all the stuff around the house.
Yeah.
So it's really great when you can actually get over here, and we're glad to see you.
Yeah.
Lots of good things happen. Like Sheila said, we had a fantastic weekend, lots of good social stuff and other stuff, and things are happening at work. But I'm actually going to talk about something that's not so great, which is I cannot get my act together when it comes to, I was supposed to start a 16-week healthy eating, getting in shape, losing some weight, getting back into core, getting back into strength. And I put it off for like 3 weeks saying I can't do it till I'm ready. And I was ready. And of course, the first night, it was Monday. It was Halloween. You know, we're giving out treats, and that's an excuse. Well, it's too, I can't really do weights tonight. And then, maybe I'll just have a couple of these treats. And
definitely, how can't you though? Like, they're right there. They're in the boxes.
And plus, we were away this weekend with the family. I mean, that's difficult. I don't think you should be too hard on yourself.
No. So at some point, I am now not going to disclose it anymore, because it's getting too embarrassing how many times I've put this off. But at some point in the next month, I hope to start a 16-week, get my act together. But it just goes to show that talk is cheap. That words are cheap and actions speak louder than words. Because here I am telling everybody, hey guys, it really feels great when you get an overall healthy eating and all that stuff. And I can't even do it myself. So I will try. And at some point, I hope to report back that it's going well.
But I also think that it's really good that you do actually say, I'm a real person and I have ups and downs, and, everything's not going perfect. So.
And I think the other really important point too is, okay, I haven't started it yet, but that doesn't mean there's not only two options to give up or do it. There is another option, which is, okay, I didn't do it, but that doesn't mean I can't try again and again and again. And at some point it'll work.
Yeah, it'll come
Definitely.
together for sure. Okay, well, everyone have a great week. Have a productive week, and hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you soon. That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.